Thank you for joining me today. I want to begin by sharing some promising new numbers. This is a stressful time for everybody, and it's nice to have a little bit of good news now and again. These numbers come from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, which is an organization, national organization that represents over 100,000 small businesses, and they have surveyed their members in respect of reaction to the handling of COVID-19. To date, 74% of Manitoba businesses that responded to that survey are fully open. 52% are operating at or above normal staffing levels. That is, on both those categories, the second highest rate among all provinces. Also, 75% of Manitoba respondents are satisfied with the levels of additional funding or programs available in their provinces, or in Manitoba, I should say, which is the highest level of satisfaction in Canada. So what we've been doing is designing programs that we hoped would work, clearly without precedent. It's difficult to say we're adopting best practices because of the fact is we don't know what those best practices are in many instances of public policy making. We're doing our best with the experience of our officials, our elected and unelected, to come up with plans that work, and it appears that in terms of economic recovery, those plans are meeting the standard of working well. Notre plan pour remettre les Manitobains au travail dans le bon résultat. We've stuck to the fundamentals in designing our recovery programs. We have targeted our programs with a focus on helping Manitobans to get back to work. We've done that from the beginning with what we consider to be the right programs at the right time. And that's now why we have the lowest unemployment rate in Canada. In addition, our Restart Manitoba campaign is helping to raise awareness of the support programs and of the necessary health practices that make our economic recovery possible. One cannot happen without the other. They are synergistic. They go together. So the better job we do of protecting ourselves against COVID, the better job we can do of helping get Manitobans their lives back. We introduced our gap protection program to offer some support to our small businesses. It was a program that was offered to make sure that people didn't slip through the cracks of federal programs that had been announced early on. Since that program was announced, we've had more than 8,700 Manitoba small businesses approved, and that program has met with increasing positive response. And as it's not over yet, as more Manitoba businesses begin to get back up on their feet, there are still a steady flow of applications coming in for the gap protection program. In addition, we knew obviously it was going to be a challenge for many young people to find the means to continue with their educations without summer work. And so we initiated here in Manitoba, more than any other province did, summer job programs that allowed us here, with the support of small businesses, charities, nonprofits across the province, to create over 9,200 jobs for young people. That's more than quadruple the number of jobs that were created last summer for young people. And our Back to Work program, our 50-50 wage subsidy program, has been well responded to. We've had over 440 employers so far, and that number continues to rise, apply for over 2,400 positions. Altogether with these programs, just those programs that involve government support, we've created over 16,000 additional jobs in Manitoba. Without those jobs, we would be approximately third in Canada on an unemployment rate, the third highest. With those jobs, we are the highest at employment. This program, the Back to Work job subsidy program, has been a key component in our economic recovery, and it's going to continue to be. And so today I am pleased to announce that we are going to enhance the Back to Work program to support even more employers and to help even more employees get jobs in Manitoba. We anticipate, as the economy continues to recover, that there will be additional demand. We're seeing that in our reports each week from our over 50 different business and industry groups are telling us that that is beginning to happen, and encouraging that to happen is obviously part of our role. We hope that we can continue to offer these supports in an effort to encourage people to get back to work and encourage more hiring. We're going to double the number, maximum number of supports for the wage subsidy from 10 to 20. Aujourd'hui, je suis heureux d'annoncer que nous améliorons le programme de retour au travail pour soutenir plus d'employeurs et d'employés au Manitoba, pour répondre à la demande supplémentaire et aider les employeurs à embaucher, à ramener plus de personnel. Nous doublons le nombre maximum d'employés éligibles à une subvention salariale de 10 à 20. Just to repeat, this program reimburses 50% of wages on new hires or laid off rehires up to $5,000 per employee. And this will help private sector businesses, not-for-profits, charities bring back former staff or hire new staff. We know also traditionally that there have been many new opportunities for employment through the final quarter of the year as a consequence of the holiday season, the additional retail activity and that has been characteristic of that time of year. We don't know to what degree that'll happen, but we anticipate it will happen to some degree. Should be able to help us to help our friends and neighbors have job opportunities. This change increases the maximum level of financial support available to employers from $50,000 to $100,000. Ce changement augmente le niveau maximal de soutien financier offert aux employeurs de 50 000 de 100 000. I would encourage small business owners, potential employers in both the private sector or nonprofit charity roles to visit the Restart Manitoba website to get more detailed information. And I would encourage them to take that leap of faith and bring back as many staff as they feel they can. Manitoba retailers have an advantage right now. They have a pool of skilled workers that are out of work. It's not an advantage for our society, but it is an opportunity for small businesses to find people who do want to get back to work, and we want to encourage that opportunity for every Manitoban. Our program is going to help small businesses who want to ramp up for that last quarter of the year, and as we learn to live with COVID-19, our government's going to continue to do all we can, as I know all Manitobans are going to do, to look for safe opportunities to allow each other to get their lives back. Alors que nous apprenons à vivre avec le COVID-19, notre gouvernement continue de rechercher des opportunités sûres pour remettre les gens au travail. We know a record number of Manitobans still remain unemployed. From the last month end numbers, approximately 40,000 fewer Manitobans working now than a year ago. And so this is an important initiative for us to pursue, and we will continue to partner with and we're grateful for the support of our small business sector in creating jobs and in giving people the opportunities that they need to support themselves. We're motivated by this challenge. Understanding the symbiotic relationship between public safety and getting people back to work is what got us the progress we have had until very recent days. We cannot have a healthcare system without a healthy economy, for example. We must keep that focus. We are in this battle for the long term, and it is a daily battle, and it is a serious battle. The stakes are very, very high. We have lost friends and neighbors to this disease. We have people whose lives will be impacted forever as a consequence of the health challenges that they will have to live with as a consequence of having experienced COVID. The consequences of our behavior are real. And the last few weeks have provided all of us with a teachable moment, not a happy one. We must respect COVID. It is our adversary. It is merciless. It is persistent. It is dangerous. It is real. But we are not powerless in this situation, and we can protect one another. Manitobans have impressed others around the country and each other with their strength, with their diligence, with their determination, with their caring. I encourage Manitobans to be determined now, to take their advice from experts such as Dr. Brent Roos, to understand that a plan is always better than fear, that fears are real and understandable, is the inescapable reality of this. We all feel those fears. But we have good leaders. They are educated and intelligent health leaders, and we need to follow their expert advice. A plan is always better than panic. Stick to the fundamentals, and together we can beat this thing. Thank you. Happy to take your questions.
Mr. Premier, can you remind us how much money was allocated for this program originally and how much has been subscribed to at this point?
Yeah, I have some approximate numbers. They might be 2 days old, Bart, but they're fairly good, I think. 16,094 jobs to date through all the various job programs, and we can get you the detail. I don't have the detail here on each of them because there's the summer student programs, there's the 50-50 wage subsidy, there was the green team, as you know, other programs such as that. The GAP program, 8,741 was the number as of Monday. Total allocations to date, they're over 100 million under those two programs alone. We anticipate as the numbers continue to rise, application numbers continue to go up, that process will continue and that those dollars will continue to flow and into the hands of people who will use them to try to get their businesses back going and help people in the process create the opportunity for them to support themselves and their families.
What would you say to businesses or business group organizations that would say, thanks for this, but the fact that these programs aren't fully subscribed indicate we don't want to see tweaks to them, we might want to see different programs more suitable for their specific industries. You're familiar with some of those calls over the last few months. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I would say that we have looked at the programs and the strategies used by every province in Canada, and our province stands ahead of all of them in terms of the effectiveness of our programs. The uptake has been broader. The support processes, the application processes are simpler and more straightforward. I would say as a comparative, there have been a number of programs offered or announced by the federal government, some of which are not underway yet, others of which are extremely undersubscribed, and others of which we've continued to lobby the federal government to redesign so they would be more appealing. For example, the commercial rent assistance program would be one that needs to be redesigned. And this is not, I do not want this misinterpreted as a criticism of the federal government. This is a difficult time for all governments, and designing programs is not easy. But the federal government has listened. So, for example, we introduced a mental health support program. The federal government has followed suit with a mental health support program, and good for them. We introduced a support for seniors program, harshly criticized by some for that. The federal government followed suit and introduced a support for seniors program. I think that was a good idea, quite frankly. On the mental health one, I should mention several thousand Manitobans receiving mental health supports through our government program. We're the first province to adopt that program. So there are many others. Programs for the disabled, supports for the disabled we introduced, the federal government followed suit on that as well. So if imitation's flattery, then I'm pleased. But the federal government needs to now make sure, and I wanted to say thank you to them, by the way, for the additional support that's, for education that was announced or leaked yesterday and I think announced today. That'll add up to about 3% of our already stated commitment to education. We announced earlier this week $100 million additional. We are the second highest province per capita funding education, but that is not to suggest the federal government's support isn't appreciated. However, the support I would like the federal government to really consider giving is a sustained support for health care. They've always been partners, but their partnerships diminished over time. And as you know, we're not getting any younger. The baby boomers are getting older. That is a big cohort. The need for services is going up, and with COVID, the wait times are going to get longer and longer. There are over 400,000 surgeries that were postponed in just the first 90 days of this pandemic that are going to have to be addressed by the provinces. And the federal government used to be a 50-50 partner, and then they slipped to 25, and now they're down to 20-ish and nationally on average. So they need to step up on that point, and the premiers are all in agreement, and I would think Canadians are in agreement as well, that in particular post-COVID, we need a sustained partnership to support healthcare in our country.
Premier, where's the COVID-19 public information campaign we were hearing about, and what's the budget for it?
I think it's right now approaching about $500,000. The program is designed to get information out to people on public health awareness, and also on programs such as the one I'm expanding on today. So I can't think of two more important things to promote. Public health awareness is obviously something we need to focus on doing a better job at. And awareness on the programs is something our business groups we've consulted with regularly have said could be higher, that many of their members aren't aware of the programs like the job supports that we offer, and that's why they haven't applied. So I think your questions tie together rather well. You know, we would like to see more people back to work, but of course if businesses aren't even aware of the programs, they're not as likely to use them.
But I'm thinking more about the health information, because it seems a lot of people are not heeding it, they're not following the fundamentals, especially young people. Where's the targeted information campaign for the people who need to hear it, apparently?
Well, it's underway in a number of forms, as you know, Carol. There have been some billboards purchased. There's been literature available. The website is getting apparently a very good response. We're trying to reach out to people who perhaps, for whatever reason, didn't identify COVID as a top priority, or didn't realize that they had some power to help themselves and each other through this process. That might sound like a surprise to most Manitobans, but not every Manitoban has responded in a way that's been as helpful as most have.
Mr. Premier, you touched on this in your opening remarks and just now, but specifically, can you comment on the fact that we have gone in this province from being the lowest outside the Maritimes in active per capita cases to having the most active cases per capita in Canada?
Sure, yeah, of course. I didn't, as you will all remember, run any victory laps when we were last on COVID numbers, and I'm not going to lose my confidence in our health officials at this point either. I think the important thing to remember is that we're in this for the long term. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And we are the determinants through our own behavior of how we'll do. Your government is doing the best it can to help and encourage better respect for the principles, the fundamentals. But of course, it's in Manitobans' hands, truly, how they respond. So I'm not going to lose my belief and faith in Manitobans. I'm not going to lose my faith in our senior health experts. I think they've done a tremendous job. And I think that, quite frankly, what gives me confidence is knowing that we have capable people and smart people in this province that are going to get us back on track.
How will Manitoba spend its proceeds or its share of the new $2 billion for education in Canada?
We won't have any trouble finding good use for that money. We have additional pressures, obviously, through our education system, some of which are evolving and will have to be adaptable. And I congratulate our education minister for working in good partnership with our education partners.
Can you give us a hint? What area?
Oh, well, there are numerous ones listed in the communique. I think the feds would probably have given you some of their categories they'd like to see money invested in, but the fact is it isn't a federal area of jurisdiction. We'll continue to invest. We're the second leading investor in education in the country of Canada, and that was before the $100 million additional commitment that we made. So we value education here.
And can you commit that?
But pressures are clear. You've covered some of these already, so I don't know if I need to give you a list. There are many. You know, obviously we didn't need PPE a year ago. There clearly are going to be some pressures on transport. There's going to be cleaning issues, antiseptic needs, things like that, and there'll be many other categories as well. We have allocated. Obviously, this is, as I say, 3%. This represents 3% of our education budget. So what we do with the federal money will simply supplement what we've already been planning on doing here with the 97% of our budget that comes from Manitoba taxpayers.
We've seen some other provinces announce money specifically for electronics to help students with maybe more remote learning, like tablets, computers. Is that something that Manitoba might follow suit with?
I think the preference, obviously, in most provinces has been that we really focus on encouraging our children to get back into their classes in a safe way, and that is where most children will learn most effectively. Certainly, we've heard that from educational experts, from teachers, and I think most families would prefer that. The fears about getting back to school are real. I'm a parent. I understand that, and I understand that the best way for us to proceed is to follow the advice that our health experts are giving us. We've taken additional precautions in respect of a number of things. Our plan is, it's actually has been praised in my discussions with other premiers who've reviewed it as being very detailed and very well thought out. But I would also say it's an incredibly challenging thing, and I understand that the dynamic around COVID has created fears on everybody's part, especially when it comes to our children. So we'll do our absolute best to make sure there's a safe learning environment for our children. We'll continue to be open. There's nothing fixed in stone here. I don't want to get into the negative potential or the hypothesis of what happens if. We've laid that out to some degree in our pandemic response system descriptions. I just continue to encourage Manitobans, and I encourage Manitobans to remember they have a part to play in making sure that we can succeed against COVID in the long term. And their attitudes matter. I say to every Manitoban, your attitude matters. COVID's contagious and so is your attitude. And so I would implore people not to contradict or go out and question the advice of public health officials. You have every right to ask for more information and more detail, but when the official opposition goes out and recommends that everyone go for testing when they're asymptomatic, that's in direct contradiction to what the public health officials are asking us to do, which is to not create long lineups for people who have symptoms and need to go and get tested. Don't do that. That's a disservice to our province and the safety that we all are desirous of. So I just encourage people who aren't health experts to not position themselves as such. I think that's dangerous.
On that note, what would you do personally if you witnessed an angry anti-masker having an anti-mask episode?
Well, we've had that. I think there was one, I'm not sure who reported, it was one in Brandon. There was a case of a temper tantrum. I've heard of others. I've heard of 2 cases in grocery stores as well. I just have to repeat what Dr. Risna said. Please be respectful. This is, for all of us, this is a difficult time. And to remember that you have a role to play in protecting the health and well-being of other people. And where there is close confinement, and in particular where there's close confinement for a long period of time where social distancing is not possible, then a mask is obviously a very, very beneficial thing, and we're of course encouraging and mandating it in the school systems for that reason. We're not inventing the science. The science is evolving, and the research that is happening is advancing our understanding of COVID. The one thing we do understand is that we're not powerless in this, unless we choose to make ourselves powerless.
Mr. Premier, Manitoba, for the most part, had been successful in keeping COVID-19 out of personal care homes. Obviously, there's now the outbreak in Buck Place. They had somebody die earlier this week. And there's still a push for more infrastructure spending to improve conditions at personal care homes. I know there's spending made earlier regarding fire safety, but not necessarily to address COVID precautions outside of some PPE, but infrastructure in general. Is there more money coming to help prevent further outbreaks in personal care homes, or even just kind of improve the infrastructure at and beyond fire safety?
Well, there's a previous announcement by our health minister about a significant investment in improving the opportunity for visiting, but in a safe manner. And you know that that project is just getting underway. There should be more to report to you on that. Obviously, we all treasure our seniors, and we know that in a personal care home there is a real danger because we've seen the outbreaks across the country and other provinces. It's obviously something that we want to do our best to prevent. And we have had tremendous success, quite frankly, in doing so to this point in time. So again, we're making every effort to make sure that we're protecting our citizens, all of our citizens, and I you know my respect for seniors, so we'll leave it at that.
What's your reaction to people going for COVID-19 testing and getting outdated information, or now I guess it would be misinformation?
Yeah, well, it's obviously something's got to be corrected immediately, and I thank those who brought that forward, because it's important to have accurate information available, and that's what we're endeavoring to do with the Restart Manitoba Act campaign.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. We will now go to the telephone for a few questions. Up first from the Brandon Sun, Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. It's Drew May here from the Brandon Sun. On Monday, we saw a letter from about 200 Maple Leaf workers asking for the plant to be shut down for a deep clean, citing their ongoing concern about getting sick on the job. Has the province had any further discussions with Maple Leaf about that, or is there any possibility of that happening?
Dr. Russin will be available to you tomorrow, I understand, to give more detailed answers to questions specific to the Brandon cluster, the Brandon situation. I can only say that his previous comments have, I hope, given assurance to most of the people in Brandon and Westman that the situation is being handled professionally and well. No one likes to take a step back to Orange, and that's a tough deal for Westman. But I think most people, certainly the feedback I'm getting is that people accept it and understand it, and they're optimistic that they can work together to achieve a recapture to a better situation than they have right now.
Thank you. No further questions.
From CBC Radio Canada, Catherine.
Bonjour, Mr. Premier. This is Catherine Logan from Radio-Canada. We talked a little bit about Ottawa's Safe Return to Class Fund, of which Manitoba is slated to see about $87.5 million. I was just looking for an official reaction.
Well, my reaction would be thank you. We appreciate the help. We would also appreciate your support and help in another issue, and that would be sustainable health care funding support. That would be in your constitutional area of authority. An obligation on your part to support healthcare recovery was there before COVID and is most certainly present now.
Great. And as follow-up, with the province having the most active cases of COVID-19 per capita, is this kind of really the time to talk about relaunching the economy? What kind of message does that send?
It sends a message that our economic recovery is critical to the health and well-being of Manitobans, as is the health and well-being of Manitobans critical to our economic recovery. The two things go together. They are symbiotic. You don't have one without the other. And so it is not good to have 40,000 people in Manitoba who can't work. And so economic recovery should not be misinterpreted as meaning a danger to people. Some of the most responsive people in our province to the challenges of dealing with COVID have been our small business people. Small business owners across the length and breadth of the province have, in the vast, vast majority, have done everything they can to protect their customers, their staff, because they have their lives on hold until they can get their businesses back going, because their life savings are invested in their businesses, because they are doing their absolute best to get people back to work. We have the lowest unemployment in Canada. That should not be taken as a bad thing. That should be taken as a very good thing.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Premier Steve Lambert from the Canadian Press. I just wanted to double check the new money that is coming from the federal government for education. Are you committed to using that new money for new measures? There is a concern that the province could use that money to simply pay for measures already announced, in essence, to backfill its own funding.
Well, we've just committed 2 days ago to an additional $100 million investment without specifying categories. Now we have offsetting support from the federal government to help us. Most certainly we'll use the help. The fact of the matter is that the federal government's support represents 3% of our educational expenditures that we budgeted for in this province, and will be useful but shouldn't come with strings attached. It's got no relevance to federal constitutional authority at all. The authority to manage education in this country rests with provincial governments. We thank the federal government for their support, and we'll most certainly see increased needs for expenditures in education, and we are prepared to accept the federal government's help in supporting us in that effort.
Okay, your use of the term offsetting might raise some eyebrows. Will the new money from the federal government be in addition to the $100 million the province has already announced?
Let's be clear. I want to be very clear. I don't want any confusion on this. Of course, it'll be in addition, but the fact remains that we have, all of us, the challenge of dealing with how much money we're going to need to borrow. So when the federal government sends us 3% in addition to what we've already budgeted, that means they're borrowing the money that they send to us. That means that potentially our deficit will be 3%, representative of the dollars that 3% represents, lower here in Manitoba, because we won't need to borrow the money. That's what this effort on the part of the federal government represents. There's no doubt we'll find ways to spend the money in education. I see already, and we all anticipate additional cost drivers happening in education, very likely beginning in the next couple of weeks.
From CTV Winnipeg, Jeff.
Oh, hi, Mr. Premier. Jeff Keel, CTV Winnipeg. I just wanted to ask you a question on today's announcement, the back to work. My phone cut off for a bit. I just wanted you to explain again why the need to double this.
Well, we've had, for example, Jeff, in the restaurant industry, they're beginning to come back in parts of what I'll call the hospitality sector, we'll say. Many companies have started hiring people back, and you saw from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business numbers that Manitoba leads the way in terms of businesses reopening and bringing back staff, but they're not there yet. However, close to 2/3 of the restaurant industry that have applied for the wage share program, the 50% subsidy program, have already hit their 10. Many of those companies are not there yet, and they'd like to hire more people, but because the economy is just beginning to reemerge, we're offering this expansion of the program, not specifically for the restaurant industry, but I give you that as one example. So they're part way back. They're not all the way back. We'd like to encourage them to hire more people. We've still got tens of thousands of Manitobans that would like a chance to work. And this program has been well subscribed to, and we hope that it continues to be, and that we can assist in continuing to give Manitobans a chance to support themselves and their families.
And my second question is, even if Winnipeg stays in the yellow, which on the response system, do you envision or see a day where masks, as we head into the busier transit season and flu season, the masks will be mandated on buses?
Dr. Roussin has referenced that there's nothing off the table. He's said repeatedly that we have to respond to COVID's challenges, and I expect he'll be able to, give you more comments that might be germane to your question tomorrow when he's available, Jeff.
From City News, Jonas.
Good afternoon, Mr. Premier. I guess good morning still. Jonas with City News. I guess I'm just going to follow up a little bit on Jeff's question there. Transit this week, there's been discussions on whether masks should be mandatory with university resuming, school back, etc. So far we haven't seen mandatory, but one thing the ATU did say this yesterday to me was that they might want to see funding from the province, from the city for disposable masks they can hand out in lieu of a mandate. Is that something you would get behind?
Well, I know that the discussions that the city officials have had with Dr. Roussin up till now, I think would be characterized as fruitful and helpful, and I expect they'll continue to have dialogue in that respect. So I would, again, defer to Dr. Roussin for his comments in respect of where they go. Clearly, this is a city jurisdictional issue. The city can make a decision on this issue if they wish. I would, again, though, suggest that any decision that any of us take should be based on good advice from our health experts.
I guess just to follow up, is there some money available if you do get a recommendation from the doctor, or that? I guess there is funds available for this if that is the way you go.
Yeah, so far so good. I mean, we're not, we haven't got any notification from any of the banks that they won't let us borrow more money.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. We now return to the News Conference Theatre.
Thank you. I hate to ask this again. This morning, your government said in the statement that this new federal money will be used incrementally, in addition. And Steve just asked twice. I just want to make it 100% clear so there's no misinterpretation. The additional funding will be over and above the 52 and the 48.
We're going to be using federal funds to support far more significant investment of Manitoba taxpayers' hard-earned dollars.
And it appears to be
And we were doing these investments long before the federal government entered into this generous offer to support us, and we'll be making these investments long after they leave too.
So there's about 85 million for Manitoba, if I understand correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've asked the various, and Marnie's also asked about remote learning. But will any of it, do you think, be used for that remote learning equipment to allow all families, including ones who don't have means to buy iPads, laptops?
Nothing's off the table.
The Conference Board of Canada today said that consumer confidence index in Saskatchewan and Manitoba fell by 4.4 points this month, with people especially worried about future employment. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think in Manitoba it would be self-evident, Carol. I'm not sure of the timing and I haven't read the study, but I obviously know, as you do, that we've had an upshoot in the numbers. That's pretty dramatic. More dramatic, I guess, than any other province, because we were, I'd say along with perhaps New Brunswick, we were beating COVID better, flattening the curve better than anyone else, and now we're not. So it would surprise me if there wasn't a concern about job security or consumer confidence didn't drop during that time. But I would again emphasize that what we have done in the past should be evidence to us that we can do it again in the future. And what we've done is we've followed the fundamentals well. For the vast majority of us, we know that by following those fundamentals well, we're going to be able to not only protect ourselves and our health and well-being, but also help others to be protected health-wise, and also help others to find work and to be able to enter back into an active, creative working life, which is what most Manitobans want to do.
The ban on commercial evictions hasn't seemed to have worked in getting more landlords to sign on to the commercial rent relief program. Just so I'm clear, are you on side with Saskatchewan about cutting out the landlord as the middleman, and what do you think needs to
Well,
happen?
when the horse you're riding dies, it's time to dismount, and the federal program hasn't worked. It's been basically, to all intents and purposes, a dead program, so perhaps it would be wise to take a look at a new mount.
How soon can that happen?
Sooner the better.
This month, next month? I don't know.
Our finance ministers has been in dialogue with Ottawa. I should mention too that I've sent congratulatory notes out to, because of the federal shuffle, to our new finance minister, Christian Frillin, and also to Dominique LeBlanc, who I've worked with in the past and know well, who has the new role of intergovernmental affairs minister. I've asked for each of them. As you know, we've been reaching out. We have requested meetings a month ago. Again, we had hoped to have meetings this week, but with the shuffle, obviously, that agenda has changed on the federal side. So our letters do ask for additional opportunities to meet. I've invited both to come to Manitoba, failing that for me to go to Ottawa. Perhaps both of those will be necessary. We've got many issues on the table that we need to advance, and the sooner the better, and one of them might be the one you just raised.
And
Mr. Premier, I have a question, just a clarification on the announcement today. I remember last time when it was increased, people were able to reapply and have 10 new employees on top of the 5 if they already got that. Can they now get 20 new employees on top of the 15, or is it just up to 20?
It's sort of like that education question. It's 10 more.
It's 10 more.
Yeah, so if you've done 10, you've got 10 more available to you. If you've just been getting back going, you potentially have 20 people that you could hire, and we encourage you to do that. we've been fortunate that most of the jobs we've created have been full-time as well, but there is, I understand, there's a number of retail operations that might be looking for part-time people in the run-up to Christmas and to the holiday season. And this program's available to them too. It's available for part-time workers as well. So I encourage our small businesses to, and our charities, nonprofits, if it's appropriate for them and if they feel able to take a look at the program and use it.
Mr. Premier,
Oh, I should mention, I'm sorry, Bart.
no, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, I had also sent a congratulatory note to the new Conservative leader, Aaron O'Toole, as well. And I thought that would be appropriate to do.
Given the fact that we have the most active cases here, logically, just on a logical basis, I know you're a premier, not the public health officer, but logically, should we stop with the mandatory quarantine? Because if we are more of a threat to the rest of Canada, why are we telling Eastern Canada?
It's one of the toughest issues. Eh? You know, nobody else is using this now, apart from the maritime sort of regional cluster approach. Nobody else is using this. But, you know, also, we know that the Brandon, large percentage of the Brandon cluster emanated from interprovincial travel from Ontario at the same time. So it creates a great sense of fear and to some consternation that people don't follow the rules. The following of the social distancing rules is the key of paramount importance to us flattening the COVID curve. And when people do not do that, and I don't wish to stigmatize anyone here, this is of course what Dr. Roussin has repeatedly referenced, this is not helpful. But it is not helpful to disregard the social distancing rules. And so I wouldn't speculate on the loosening of any restrictions at this point in time. I think it'd be incongruous with the reality of the upshoot in the number of cases in Manitoba. I would implore, and just repeat what Dr. Roussin has said so many times, be kind to one another. You know, nobody wants to get COVID. Some people have behaved in a way that has made that possible, and that's unfortunate. But they have it now, and their friends and family are feeling the effects of that, and their communities are feeling the effects of that. Just be respectful of one another and consider that if we can convince each other, and that's what we're trying to do as a government, and what Dr. Roussin is trying to do at every opportunity, convince each other to actually remember that we are not powerless in this. We are not going to be victims in this. We are able to make decisions which can protect ourselves, our friends, our family, our communities, our economy. Then we'll behave accordingly. So that is the message today. We can grow our economy, but only if we grow in our understanding and willingness to adhere to the fundamentals around COVID. It's not going away, and God willing, neither are we. So let's demonstrate the persistence and determination that's necessary to help us succeed here. Manitoba hasn't been doing that. We need to continue to reaffirm those are the qualities that we want to demonstrate going forward. Thanks, everybody.